Uh, Good morning, friends. Uh, my name is Dr. Ramakrishnan. I've been giving presentations in Tamil language in about railways and also about certain spiritual topics. Today, we are going to see about uh, the Coimbatore history of Coimbatore Railway and Nilagiri's. It is a presentation in English, so it would be helpful to people who find difficult to understand the Tamil language. But this would be a bilingual. There will be bilingual presentations henceforth. So this is going to be a very interesting video about the Kongu, that is Kongu Nadu, which is basically headquartered from Coimbatore, and also about the history of Kongu Nadu railway, and also about the Nilagiri mountain railway. So today, let us start with how we know the railways came to India in approximately during 1830s. So then the railway was primarily used for uh, goods transport because the in 18th century, beginning of 18th century, only in the Europe they have started this the railway. So primarily, they have not perfected it. Still, there were risks of accident, and the entire world they were using horse carts, coaches, horse coaches, and countries like India we were using bullock carts. So this was a primary means of transport. 18th century also did not have any other mode of transports like motor car or other modes of transport. The steam engine has been just invented or perfected because there were risks of boiler bursts and other risks. So they were just perfected it. So primarily in 1830s, they brought smaller size engines to Madras, primarily to construct various buildings using granite from Sirumalai near Madras. The granites and quarried, ballast were brought through a railway track by one Arthur Cotton. He later also went on to construct the Arthur Cotton project of Godavari Godavari scheme, irrigation scheme. So primarily, these were the two places where the goods railway tracks were laid in 1830s, and these were removable. They were all primarily for goods transport, and alternatively, engine, bullock, or even horses could be used to draw the weight, and they were arranged in such a way that the height was more elevated towards Sirumalai, from where these gravels, rocks were brought, granites were brought, and the reverse direction most of the time they went empty or with little bit breaking equipments or with the wood and other utilities. So they were lightweighted. So this was primarily gravity assisted, but at the same time, we have to agree that there were engines. So these engines were brought to Chennai. Then Chennai did not have an harbor. So Chennai harbor came in 1881 only. So till that time, the southern India, the harbors were primarily located in the west coast. That means today's Calicut, where Vasco da Gama landed. Then we had British ports of Ponnani, and also Chaliyam, which is a offshoot of Calicut, and also in places like Cochin, where it was done in collaboration with the kings there, Maharajas, and also in Trivandrum near Kodachal. So these were all preliminary harbors, and through these harbors, bringing. But how will they transport it once it comes down there? So the challenge was that even if it comes to the west coast, bullock carts cannot, carry these heavy engines. So they decided, okay, the port problem in Chennai was solved by high sea port method. That is, it is there still working in Kadalur. Now the dredgings have made many of the ports deeper, but otherwise, big ships would come and anchor 2 kilometers away in the high seas, and from that place, smaller wooden carts and catamarans Catamarans are primarily used to carry heavy weight by a Indianized or indigenous engineering technique by adjusting the width and sometimes using a square and rectangular or multi-rectangular models where the weight could be loaded. But the risk is that when you bring expensive equipment and the weight calculation goes wrong somewhere, then from the ship it directly drowns. And there was no big method to bring back those drowned uh, you know cargo from the ship. If it drowns into the sea, it's gone. We want to only claim the insurance. So that is very important, and the risk was high. The insurance premiums were high. So what was happening was that these steam engines were brought, few were successfully offloaded. And how they were offloaded, that is also they used manual laborers, Kalasis, who used to do pulling with a metal metal, like a hook, which could carry heavy loads, and then they were loaded in the catamarans. Another method later invented, which we still today use for lifting borewell pipelines, is the block and chain method. So these were the two major methods they were using in the high seas. There will be frames where there will be hooks, and the ship will come and dock there, and the entire thing will be bound and primarily by ropes and chains, and then they will be lifted up, and then they are offloaded from the ship into the catamarans, and the catamarans further were brought manually by rowing and pulling towards the shore. So few engines successfully brought were used between Sirumalai and Chindadripet, the first cargo, the goods lane, and also the Arthur Cotton project, irrigation project of Godavari Dam. So after this, it took almost 20 years before, in 1853, heavier engines could be offloaded in the coast of Mumbai, and few more cargo which was coming to Calcutta got lost on the sea, not by drowning, but they went to the wrong harbor, and then they were brought back to India. So that's how the Calcutta, which ordered the train sets first, got the trains later, but Mumbai got the privilege to have the first railway because the goods, the wagons were made in India, but the engines were brought from England and other European countries. So the similar time, what was happening is similar time what was happening is the Chennai, they brought few more engines, and in 1856 the successful uh, successful um, uh, the railway first rail train in southern India plied between, with the help of Arcot Nawab, between Rayapuram and Valaja. So primarily they had kept a railway embankment in current today's Chennai Central. Then it was called as uh, Moore's Market, Moore Market. So Moore Market area did not have a station. It just has it is an halt or a just a place where you can board the train, and the train successfully made trips to Valaja, where the it was then called Arcot because Arcot, the Nawab Palace was there, and all the VIPs traveled in that train in 1856. At the same time, there were daily shunting service between Tiruvallur, where very influential clerical staff of the British Empire used to have their houses. So the Tiruvallur to Chennai was the first suburban service we could call. But then there was challenges all over in southern India, primarily because there were a lot of rivers, canals, and nalas. Many of them had water, and many of them were dry, but they were all deep enough. So because of this, we have to construct bridge. Then British were not investing much in India, and they were not constructing many bridges. They only constructed where they need it. It's called trunk route. Where they need it, they had things. So the trunk route from Madras used to go down south to Chengalpat, then Kanjivaram. From Kanjivaram, it was Tiruvannamalai. From Tiruvannamalai, it was Salem, one way, and the other way from Chengalpat, it went to Villupuram, Tiruchi, and further. Similarly, from Salem, it went to Erode, via Tirupur, it reached Coimbatore, and from Coimbatore, they were going towards the Kerala coast. And also, in a very surprise in 1820, 20 years after the Tipu Sultan, you know, uh, had lost the war, Tipu. When he lost this war in 1899, the British from Mysore Empire could take some of the mountains in the Nilagiri ranges, and the John Sullivan, the collector of Coimbatore, on the instruction of Monroe, made certain expedition towards the hill sections to notice that the temperature is quite low and tolerable for the British, especially during the summer season. Thus came the summer capital of the British Empire, that is the Nilgiris or today's Ooty. Then it was called Otakamand on the Toda language, or Udhagamandalam as per the Tamil language, and also Neelagiri as per Sanskrit, and Ooty is a derivative of uh, Otakamand. So, what I would like to say here is the history starts here with John Sullivan in 1820s, and then he writes to Monroe and other governor generals thereafter that Ooty is a very suitable place for Europeans, especially during the summer, and he recommends the name for the summer capital, which was immediately accepted. From that time, almost immediately after the New Year, the transportation of all files and important documents started from Chennai, because Chennai normally used to get hot by Pongal time itself, and then entire file, the peons, the clerical staff, everyone have to move. So they all moved, and then they will reach Coimbatore. Till the a full-fledged capital was announced, the only means of transport was through road, and down from Mettupalayam, because of the risk of crossing the river Kallar, which is a very ferocious, mountain uh, stream. They used to normally use the bullock carts and the horse carts, and to used to take the expertise of the locals, primarily the Baduga people, and also by the Kankanis, who are basically from the Diliar and Pillai community, and a few Brahmins. So they helped them to cross the Kallar River and other mountainous ranges. And this Badugas primarily used it as a business route to bring down the hilly products down to from Nilagiri Mountain and take back the products they need from Mettupalayam market. Then Mettupalayam was then also a market. Uh, and then what happens is a very interesting thing, that the British decides to make a railway in 1850s itself. But they are immediately realized that the cost would be phenomenal, and to come to the foothills and travel by road from there. So the first railway line, when it was laid between Chaliyam and Madras Central, or today's Royapuram, and via Madras Central, was very tactfully planned via the Coimbatore, and then old Coimbatore station is today's Pottanur. So primarily, this railway track was planned and it was immediately executed. There was very less bridges required because Chaliyam was located in the south bank of Chaliyam River, which is a mighty river today. Then comes Bharatapura. So instead of building a bridge across Bharatapura and crossing towards Thrissur, they decided to take the train via Shornur and further down to Patambi, Palakkad, and via Palakkad inside the forest. They could bring the train to Pottanur. The today's Pottanur was then old Coimbatore. So the station building, before building, they decided to make a building in Coimbatore because the Pottanur had a very nice weather. One side, the Pollachi had a lot of agricultural and coconut and other things. Similarly, the climate, the weather from north was also good, and weather from Nilagiri mountains were also good, and the thick Vadayar forest then also gave a very nice climate in Pottanur. So they decided to make a British colony outside Chennai in Pottanur, and it was housed with the British and also Anglo Indians, and they were trained to run. They were the first motorman, you can say, or the loco pilots. They were trained to primarily utilize the steam engines. A few of the steam engines from Madras were brought here, but it was a very big task, to bring the train from London to Madras, because you could not. Then they realized the mistake also in 1859 they committed by making a Nagapattinam as a port, because to bring anything from the west, they have to cross the uh, Rameshwaram, Ramasetu. So that was not more than 10 feet in many places. So there were a lot of ships which were getting damaged while crossing the Ramasetu. So they have to circumambulate all the way down from Sri Lanka. They have to go to Colombo, then they have to go to south tip of Sri Lanka, then they have to replenish and then come back all the way either directly to Nagapattinam, Kadalur, or to the Chennai. So these few engines which were brought primarily were used for training, because you need to train the pilot primarily for braking. Then there were three types of people. One was the main loco pilot. Primarily, you will be a European or an Anglo-Indian. Then a person to put the fuel, that is a coal, and then comes the most important person, that's a brakeman. They were primarily Indians, and they have to, when you make multiple coaches, the Indians have to walk on a thin narrow line on the side, risking their life to apply coach wise or the wagon wise brakes. And the brakes were not very smooth then. They were all creating a lot of screeches and bumpiness in the ride. But somehow they perfected this, and the Potanur railway colony was taking a shape. 1861, they decided to construct the railway station building even before the full-fledged track could come. And few of the railway lines were already made. The practice lines, the pit lines, the siding lines were all made primarily for, and also for the training of the fire people. So they were made in few kilometers, primarily from Noyal towards till up to, you can say, Madukarai area. So here the railway colony was taking a shape. The houses built, the church built, and other places built. So the British could make this as the poor man's Ooty, the Pothanur. And then comes the very interesting point. British decides to utilize Chaliyam port and Panani ports, which are not very shallow ports, but they're deep ports, so they could bring the engine almost very close to the pier or to the land. So they made a pier here and offloaded the engines. So one big problem is we did not have trucks, which I have already told you. So the most interesting thing, they're laying the railway track from 1959, when once they understood that Nagapattinam would fail, so they start applying the railway track all the way from Chaliyam, which is south of Bepur in Calicut, via Patambi, Palakkad. They bring it to Coimbatore, and they were already laying a line from Arcot all the way to Tirupattur and to Salem. So these lines were connected. The railway station building in Coimbatore was built in 18th July 1861. It was completed as per Morgan's Malabar Manual. And also, this railway station construction was done, but there was no connecting railway track. Railway track was inaugurated on 14th April 1862. The first train ran from Chaliyam all the way to Madras, primarily carrying the engines and few of the British men who wanted to travel in this route. And that was a very smooth construction right from Pothanur all the way to Tirupattur and further to Madras, because hardly the river had water, and it could be easily made by an embankment and other type of railway activities. So after this particular uh, project was successfully made, then the most important thing happens, that is the train starts going, and the fun and two mail were started. They were all starting from Bepur, later from Calicut, which was further later expanded to Mangalore. These were called, they were not having any name. They were saying that this is a train from Malabar region. So they used to say Malabar mail was a name coined later in 1868, but they were calling it as train from Malabar, that is called 01, and the train from Chennai was called as 02, or vice versa. So these trains started to run from 1862, and then they realized that they want to make a bifurcation, because many of the British officers wanted to stay back in Ponmalai and further explore the route, because then the British already had made a concrete road, first concrete road between Ponmalai via Ukkaram to via Coimbatore market, all the way to Mettupalayam, which is now called as the Mettupalayam road. And then this road was completed and finished up to Kallar Bridge, and the Kallar was a very big challenge. This made the Britishers could only travel during the summers when there was no water or very little water in the Kallar via the land route. But then they decided to construct a bridge, and this must be the second oldest road bridge constructed primarily in the route. So they construct a bridge, and this bridge was initially a masonry work with brick masonry work, with bricks and also using tight ropes and wooden planks. So this was primarily designed to only one bullock cart or one horse cart could cross at one time. There was a signalsman who would stop the other vehicle even entering the bridge, because the bridge would collapse if you put overload. And then once you cross Kallar, then you are uphill. It would normally take from Mettupalayam to Coonoor one day, and from Coonoor to Ooty the second day, or they used to have intermediate stops in forest range houses. By the time the forest rangers also understood there were a lot of resources in Nilgiris, including sandal, rosewood, shola forest trees, and also red sandals and sandalwood, and ivory could be also taken from the elephants. So they primarily were interested for this purpose and also for the weather reasons. By 1830, a hospital, which was also called as a some asylum, was already constructed in Wellington, primarily for the British military officers, military civilians, and also for the general civilian and public, primarily the British people, the whites. So this Wellington hospital was a very big relief for them for healing their wound and everything. This is a very important landmark, and from that point, further, the railway project started. From 1862 to almost 1873, the route was only up to Ponmalai, and they were using the Coimbatore main town area primarily for using the road route. But then they had already made plans to connect Coimbatore town area. So when they finished the construction by 1st February 1873. That was a halt station at Coimbatore, and one more halt station at North Coimbatore, primarily for the forest rangers in the adjacent Forest College, which is just walkable distance or just a stone throw away from the current North Coimbatore station. And some of the zamindars and padekars, they actually wanted to construct small halt station in the railway track, which was a branch line from Ponmalai all the way to Mettupalayam. So this, brought into a picture the stations of Nallambalayam, which was a halt, then Urumandabalayam, again, it was sponsored by some of the industrialists and also by the Zamindars, and Tudiyalur was later constructed, might have been later constructed. We don't have a record of about Tudiyalur. Then comes Periyanaikambalayam, Narasimhanaikkambalayam, and also Karamalai. These were primarily sponsored by the Zamindar. The buildings were sponsored. The halt stations were installed. But the prime reason was basically for the Britishers. They wanted to, go to Ooty. So that was their primary intention. And already they have already announced that Ooty would be the sooner or later after, John Sullivan. And where there were a few more collectors like Collector Bango and other people, they had made the beautification process of Ooty. So Ooty has become a white town, and Coonoor becomes a black town. So all the supporting staff used to live in Coonoor and Ooty. So they by 3 o'clock the work is over. The staff would start traveling back in horses, horse carts, and bullock carts back to Coonoor, where they used to stay. And this was a routine every year. Then comes in after February, when Coimbatore main station and Coimbatore North stations were constructed and further stations were constructed. By 31 August, the Mettupalayam station becomes a full-fledged station, and the current staff quarters area were the lodging area for the British officers. And from there, Now the Badagas who were coming all the way, or the other Kankanis who were coming all the way to Ponmalai, had 1 day less trip. They had to, because they had to travel 40 kilometers less, and they all came to Mettupalayam railway station to pick up the British officers and British other staffs and take them up. So British the Ooty trip to Ooty used from 3 days to 2 days. From Coimbatore, it used to take 3 days. Third day you reach the Ooty. Now it is a 3 hours drive away. Just imagine. So this entire history comes. But in the meantime, in 1862, I told you that the first train plied. In 1864, a named train comes, and this is the first named train of Southern India, even before Bangalore Mail. And this train name is Blue Mountain Express. Now, this is a difference between express and mail. Mail used to carry general public's mail, packets and everything. Express will not carry; it will only carry the RMS. It won't carry the general public. Only the British officers and British related documents it will carry in the luggage place. So 1864, the Neelagiri Express starts to run from Royapuram, which used to have a viceroy's cabin, which used to have collector cabins, which were all like first class and deluxe first class and regular first class, and the remaining, for the British officer was called first class, and the second class is for educated Indians, and third class is for the general Indians. So this train used to start from Royapuram, have a stop at MooreMarket, and then further go down south to Arakonam, Arakonam, and further to Salem to reach to Ooty. By 1873, the construction of loop line is also completed so that we could further expand Neelagiri Express without touching Ponmalai. It crossed over via Vellalur Road loop line directly to Coimbatore Main, and it was in February it reached Coimbatore instead of Ponmalai, and further it was expanded to Mettupalayam. This could have been by two proportions. One is that Vellalur was also a notching point for few more trains coming from Mangalore side, bringing British officer from Mangalore side, Calicut, Mangalore, and one side from Cochin, and other British officer from Tiruchirappalli and Bangalore. All of them, all these trains were having three, four, five cars, and they were all parked between Vellalur Road and Ponmalai. And then one single train would start after 2 to 3 hours after the British had refreshed themselves and in the railway lodges in Ponmalai and Vellalur Road, and then they were further brought to Coimbatore Main, and they from there they one train used to leave further to Mettupalayam. By 1873, a direct train with the amalgamation of coaches from other places, maybe from Tiruchi, one coach would be attached. From Bangalore, two coaches would be attached. From Cochin, one coach will be attached, and one more coach will be attached from the Bangalore, one or two more coaches. All these coaches were taken all the way to Mettupalayam. And Mettupalayam, they used to take rest, and then further next day morning, they will start their road journey. This continued from 1873 almost till 1899, where even 1898, 1 year before the passenger traffic started, the goods traffic was started in the Neelagiri mountain, primarily carrying the mountain goods, including tea estates, newly formed tea and coffee estates, and eucalyptus and other things, downhill and uphill. The utilities for required for the British were carried forward. So here happens a very interesting thing. Chennai Harbour is still not under finished its construction. So bringing coal was a big challenge. Coal from Europe, that is primarily from Africa, South Africa, and other African countries, were first transferred to Aden, which is in today's Yemen, and further it was brought to Cochin, it was brought to Calicut and other harbor towns, and further they were loaded in train coaches and brought. So bringing all the way to make steam from steam was a big challenge, and this challenge, then they realized that they will only hold it for premium trains like Neelagiri, Bangalore Mail, and the remaining short trains they started to use firewoods, which was abundant in the local market. They were purchased and kept in halt station and other watering stations, and they were loaded in the carriage van just next to the uh, engines, and they were used to fire the steam, and the steam was used. So this was a second fuel after the regular European South African coal, because you have to realize that there was no navally lignite. Either the coal has to be brought from North India. There was hardly any harbor connecting Calcutta and Madras, and there was railway track are just on the process. And other place coal could be brought is from the east to the east coast, is from Australia. So all these were challenging. So firewood was an alternative fuel to coal. This went on till 1870. From 1893, the coal scarcity was abandoned. The coal which was just arriving were all taken for other important trains and goods trains. Only the premier trains like Neelagiri Express and the Bangalore Mail, and also train from Bangalore to Coimbatore now, which is running up to Trivandrum, the Bangalore train. These were the trains which were getting coal. Local trains which were doing shunting service between Ponmalai to Mettupalayam were using firewoods. And this second thing, it went all up to the First World War, and further by the time the British had perfected the railway lines and also constructed multiple ports. By the end of First World War in 1919, the Kallar Iron Bridge was constructed. It took 6 years to finish the construction. Till that time, the Kallar Bridge, the brick bridge, went for an upgradation from the regular ropeway. It was constructed with steel carriageway with metal, yeah, wooden, sheets, so they could carry multiple carriageways uphill. This went on till 1899. By 1899, the Coonoor line opens up, and this will reduce further 1 day of the trip. So they will travel from Madras in the night, by morning, by afternoon, almost till by 8 9 o'clock, they reached Coimbatore. They used to take rest in Ponmalai and Coimbatore stations, where the British lodges were available. And then after a lot of activities, they'll push on to Mettupalayam the same day, and the night they will spend over at Mettupalayam. Next day morning, early in the morning, they used to start the trip to Coonoor, and Coonoor then was already connected by train, and then they will lodge one more day at Coonoor, and then further by reaching UT the next day. So it approximately take 1 day from Madras to Coimbatore, 1 day from Coimbatore to Mettupalayam, 1 day from Mettupalayam to Coonoor, and half a day more to Uti. And then this further reduced with the direct introduction of a direct train, the Neelagiri Express, which used to reach almost by 11 12 hours from now. It takes 8 hours, then 7 to 8 hours, then it used to take 11 to 12 hours to reach from Madras all the way to Mettupalayam. By 1873 April, Chennai Central Station was completed its construction, and then further there was benefits because they could, they had a lot of space in Chennai Central Station comparing to Rayapuram, and then they could directly travel to Mettupalayam within 12 hours, and then rest at Mettupalayam, and next day they used to take the Nilagiri. And this travel was further shortened by introduction of a connecting train, that is the Neelagiri Express, went all the way up to Uti in meter gauge. And this was a one single train. You could still today you can buy a train from Madras Central to Neelagiri, that is to Udhagamandalam, and reservation would be kept up to Mettupalayam, and you can have a secondary reservation from Mettupalayam, the meter gauge train to Uti. So it is available today also. So this travel was further reduced to 1.5 days, which is almost till today. It is one night and a half a day. You could reach to Uti. So that is the current scenario. By 1873, Mettupalayam station was perfected. 1899, Coonoor station was perfected. 1907, 1908, and the Neelagiri Mountain, that is the Udhagamandalam station, the last station in Neelagiri Mountain, was also completed. Then comes the coal scarcity part. It took some more years, to solve this problem. By the time the First World War was over, the coal problem was solved, and then it all ran on giant coal engines, right from from Chennai to Mettupalayam. It came in a giant coal engine and a miniature engine, which is an X-class steam engine brought from Switzerland. We used to take them uphill, and this engine used to climb both on the rack and pillion and the addition railway, right from Coonoor to Ooty. That did not have rack and pillion. It's called addition railway. So it was one of the highest gradient apart from Darjeeling Himalayan Railway in the entire Asia. It was one of the highest gradient railways. Then comes the most interesting story about the Nilagiri Express. The Nilagiri Express ran almost up to 1979 in coal. It had already ran on firewood and also in the smaller size coal engines with iron ore engines. Then comes the fourth type of engine, that is the diesel engine on broad gauge. And when the diesel engines were bought, they also tried the meter gauge YDM models. But the YDM model failed to climb the hills because they were heavier and they were internal combustion engine with a lot of extra equipments. So the YDM engines did not climb, but were tested via road. It was taken to Coonoor, and the gradient between Coonoor and Ooty, they were successfully tried. So the Nilagiri Express now used to travel from diesel all the way from Madras. It came to Mettupalayam by diesel engine. The loco reversal was not there till 1956. Once the Vellalur line was removed, then there was a loco reversal at Coimbatore main station. It will come via Pyramid, and then it will land in Coimbatore main station junction, and from there is a loco reversal to Mettupalayam. Actually, the two that is actually it is increasing the time. Otherwise, we can travel 1 more hour early to Mettupalayam and further to Ooty. So the amalgamation, the slip coach, and the augmentation of coach were all stopped. Anyone who would wish to come to Ooty has to come to Coimbatore and take the Nilagiri Express or some other intermediate station. And Nilagiri Express would take you up to Mettupalayam, and the connection train initially it is going in the meter gauge. It's a steam engine working in coal. Then hits the coal scarcity. The quality of coal comes down with the lignite coal coming from either from Neyveli, or the other coals from India also become very poor quality, so they could not cook the steam and create the necessary pressure. As I told you, the 1979 trials from 1979 failed to climb between Mettupalayam and Ooty. They continued to use steam engines. So there were four engines. Initially, there were three engines. There were a loco reversal, one broad gauge diesel engine, then a meter gauge steam engine, and from Coonoor to Ooty, there was a meter gauge diesel engine. Then comes the time of electrification between Chennai and Coimbatore. By this time, electric engines drew uh, the engine from Chennai to Coimbatore, and from Coimbatore to Mettupalayam, a broad gauge diesel engine, that is the second engine, and then from there a steam engine which would carry from Mettupalayam to Coonoor, and again a meter gauge diesel engine which was used to carry you from Coonoor to Ooty. So four engines were used till electrification happened in 2015. Then again it became three engines, but definitely there was a loco reversal that was happening at Coimbatore main station. By this time, 2011, the coal scarcity had hit second time. First time we used firewood, but firewood is not a solution for because it's a pollutant and it could not cook the steam necessary amount, to take the train all the way from Mettupalayam to Ooty, which is the highest gradient. The second choice was given to the furnace oil, and this was developed in the Golden Rock area, Golden Rock of Tiruchchirapalli. The furnace oil is perfected and it ran for 11 years. The Mettupalayam to Coonoor, furnace oil burned, not the internal combustion engine, but an external engine, and the steam was cooked, and the steam was used for the steam engine. By 2022, thanks to the new two technician Manikam and Subramaniam, that they have perfected the high-speed diesel instead of furnace oil, almost reducing the pollution. So this is the eighth engine. Furnace oil was the seventh engine, and now comes the eighth engine, That is a thing. In the future, we may get the hydrogen engine. That would be the ninth engine. I would say Mettupalayam railway station has seen 10 different types of engine on fuels. That is, it has seen meter gauge, uh, coal engines, steam engines. Then comes meter gauge diesel engines. Then it has seen broad gauge steam engines. Then broad gauge electric engines, broad gauge diesel engines. They have become five. Then it also seen furnace oil engine. It has seen now the high speed diesel engine, which is made of steam. So these are two steam engines, and also firewood engine. That is the eighth engine, and then comes the giant coal engines, which were primarily bringing express from Madras to Mettupalayam. So nine different. In the future, we may see the 10th engine, that is a pollution-free hydrogen engine. Apart from this, Mettupalayam has also seen the Memo type of traction, which is a very different comparing to the electric traction used in the engines like VAP 7, VAP 4, etc. So this is the very unique feature about the Mettupalayam. It is the only station in southern India to have both meter gauge railway track and broad gauge railway track today. So, which is with this I conclude my video. I thank all the audience today, and I'm ending the streaming today. Thank you.